welcome to Criminalist Behavior Podcast, the podcast that takes you deep into the heart of Louisiana's history and current, most chilling true crime stories. I'll be guiding you through the darkness of these crimes and all those involved. Each week, we dig deep on those forgotten crimes or those crimes currently happening with the underlying legends that continue to haunt us. So lean in, listen, and get ready because true crime is anything but ordinary. Stay with me as we unravel what happened in these mysteries. So, like I said, we're going to be recording an episode today. I'm actually re-recording an episode that I did already. And the reason why I'm doing so is one, there's an update in the case, and two, there's just so much more information that I could have put out there, and now I want to get that to you. So I'm just going to re-record a case. Formerly, this was case number 2 that I did, and just recently, within the last month or so, we got an update on this case, and this case in particular is about former Saints player Will Smith and how he was murdered. We will be talking about a former defensive end from the New Orleans Saints who was shot and killed after a road rage incident involving a hit and run. This is going to be episode number 29, and if this is your first time listening, hi, my name is Sarah Sidier, and I'm your host for Criminalist Behavior Podcast. I'm going to give you a trigger warning. This episode may contain content of graphic nature, including descriptions of physical violence against adults, children, and animals. Listener discretion is advised. So, Will Smith was born on July 4th, 1981 in Queens, New York, to his parents, William and Lisa Smith. He was raised in Utica, New York, and he attended Proctor High School, which was also in Utica. Will Smith was rated by the Prep Football Report as the best defensive line prospect in the state, and as a senior, he had 20 sacks. Will Smith was a 4-year letterman at Ohio State from the year 2000 to 2003, and he helped lead the Buckeyes to the 2002 BCS National Championship, and he was also named a first-team All-American the following year. Will Smith was selected as the 18th pick in the first-round draft of the 2004 NFL Draft by the New Orleans Saints. He had a successful rookie season with 30 tackles and 7.5 sacks. Smith gradually established himself as one of the premier defensive ends in the NFL. In his first season as a full-time starter, Will Smith became a leader of the defensive line, and he emerged as one of the NFL's top defensive ends. And in 2006, he was named his first Pro Bowl as a starter. In the year of 2008, the Saints agreed to terms with Will Smith on a 6-year contract. This contract offered $70 million contract with a $26 million guarantee. The deal made him the 3rd highest paid defensive end in the NFL. And for the 2013 season, Smith was slated to move to the outside linebacker position in the 3-4 defense favored by the Saints' new defensive coordinator, Rob Ryan. So, Will Smith made a very immediate impact on the football field for the Saints as a rookie. And whenever he recorded his 7.5 sacks, as previously discussed, he also had 5 forced fumbles and, again, was selected the Pro Football Weekly All-Rookie Team. 2 seasons later, in the year 2006, he led the club with 10.5 takedowns and added 3 forced fumbles as he powered a club defensively that reached the NFC Championship for the first time, and he was selected to the Pro Bowl. And that following season, Will Smith was named a defensive team captain in his 4th season as a professional. So he was getting out there with a professional career in football, y'all. In 2009, Will Smith started all 16 games and posted a career high at 13 sacks to rank second in the NFC. And he added 77 tackles, which was 42 of those tackles was by himself. His first career interception, 4 passes defensed, and 3 forced fumbles as New Orleans captured Super Bowl 44. So, in case you are like, what? You're speaking Greek to me? I do love football, by the way. So that might not make any sense to you. Just know that he was a hell of a ball player. Okay, that's pretty much what you need to know. But if you're like me and you keep up with sports, I mean, here's his career traits, okay? So, overall, Will Smith appeared in 139 career games with 120 starts for the Saints and posted career totals of 618 tackles. 363 of those was by himself. 60. I can't even talk, y'all. Oh my God. Bear with. So 67.5 sacks, 2 interceptions, 24 passes defense, and 19 forced fumbles, 7 fumble recoveries, which is a lot because them fumbles will get you every time. So if he forced them fumbles on another team, that means he stripped them of their ball. And if he recovered a fumble, that means one of our players dropped the ball and he was able to recover it before the other team got it to score a point. Okay? So that's just a little glimpse of that. So 19 fumbles and 7 fumble recoveries. So Will Smith's takedown total ranks 5th in the club record books. Will Smith was induced into the new Saints Hall of Fame in the year 2016. However, Will Smith suffered from a torn ACL in the Saints' 3rd preseason game against Houston Texans on August 25th, 2013. And this put him out for that season. And on August 27th, the Saints placed Will Smith on injured reserve leave, ending his season of 2013. In February of 2014, Will Smith was actually released by the New Orleans Saints. And on April 5th, 2014, Will Smith signed with the New England Patriots, and he was eventually released during the preseason with them as well on August 24th, 2014. So that is how Will Smith came to be the famous pro football player in the NFL, playing for the New Orleans Saints, and just a few months for the New England Patriots. In his personal life, outside of football, Will Smith married Raquel Nee Joseph in the year of 2008 while he was coming up and rising with his Saints career. And the couple had 2 children together, but Will Smith also had a 3rd child from a previous relationship. They had 2 children together, and that would be Winter and Lisa. And William, his son, was from another relationship. William was actually named after his father. He was a junior. And I'm sorry, I just lost my place. Okay, his daughter, Lisa, was the middle child, and his son, Winter, was the youngest of the children. In 2010, Lafayette, Louisiana, the police actually arrested Will Smith after his wife, Raquel, accused him of grabbing her by the hair and dragging her down the street. The charges against Will Smith were actually dropped in 2012, according to those court officials. They had 2 children and the 3rd from the previous marriage. So Will Smith was suspended 4 games before the 2012 season because if you're familiar with the Saints, they had this bounty gate. It was a scandal that they did, and pretty much they got paid more for taking out players on roughing the plays, okay? And this meant damn near the whole team, including the coach, was suspended for a certain amount of time. Whew, excuse me. During the 2011 season, and for the 2012 season, this is whenever the Bounty Gate scandal actually took place, in which Saints players were accused of paying out bonuses or bounties to teammates for injuring opposing players. But Will Smith's suspension was overturned by an appeals panel, and he was actually reinstated by the league, and he did not miss any games that season. Will Smith and his wife and kids stayed in the area after he retired from the football, and he remained active with various charities he supported in the community. I am so tripping up on my words, and it's probably because I'm so exhausted, but I promise y'all I was getting y'all an episode out tonight, so these yawns, excuse me, they keep happening in between me talking and me tripping up on my words. I do apologize, but I'm trying. So Will Smith was admired for his tenacity and grit on the football field, and for also remaining in the area even after he left the team. So recall that he was born in Queens, New York, so he actually stayed in Lafayette, Louisiana. So after he left the team, he and his wife lived in Kenner, a New Orleans suburb, and Will Smith commuted to Florida, where he was getting his master's degree in business at the University of Miami. Florida is so not close. I mean, it's close to Louisiana, but I mean, damn, that's a good little distance to travel to go to college. So, like Miami from Kenner, I want to say it's like, I don't know, 12 hours? Yeah. Anyways, so that's the little background on former football player Will Smith, his wife, and kids. Now I'm going to bring in the suspect in this whole incident. I'll give you a little background about him. His name was Cardell Hayes, and he was a 36-year-old man with a background as a former semi-pro football player, and he owned a tow truck business. His father was Anthony Hayes, and he was actually shot by the NOPD, New Orleans Police Department, in case you didn't know that acronym, and he was pronounced dead on the scene. So Cardell had it pretty rough. Cardell was known as the nickname Bear, and he is a former New Orleans prep football star who was actually once considered one of Louisiana's rising gridiron stars. He was listed as a player for the Crescent City Kings, which was a local development team, and that was in the year 2015. Bear, or Cardell Hayes as you would, graduated from University of New Orleans, and in 2014, he appeared as an extra in the film 22 Jump Street. On April 9th, 2016, Will Smith was involved in a traffic accident with a Hummer driven by 28-year-old Cardell Hayes Smith. No, sorry. 28-year-old Cardell Hayes. Will Smith was less than 2 blocks away in the lower Garden District of New Orleans, and apparently they fled the scene of the crime that the Hummer hit this other vehicle, and they just literally fled the scene. Will Smith was in the Hummer and driving the Hummer with his wife and 2 unnamed passengers, and apparently they hit Cardell. So, as with anybody who's involved in an accident, Cardell pulled over onto the shoulder, and he was going to try to exchange information with Will Smith. But that didn't happen. Will Smith kept going, did not stop or pull over on the side of the road to exchange any type of information or any of that. So Cardell Hayes then took it upon himself to follow Will Smith to obtain his license plate due to him failing to stop. Will Smith refused to pull over. Then Cardell took it upon himself and rear-ended Will Smith's Mercedes-Benz G-Wagon in an ongoing confrontation. The impact was so hard enough that it broke the rear window in a Mercedes that Smith was driving. The 6 people in both cars got out, leading to a very large confrontation that became rather quickly very, very heated. At that point, a bystander at a nearby bar heard Cardell Hayes mention that he had a gun. Will Smith then stated that he also had a gun too, but before Will Smith could get back to the car, he was shot in the back and killed. Investigators later arrived on the scene to find that Will Smith had 8 bullet wounds, and he was slumped over in the front seat with a pistol that was tucked in between the seat and the center console. So, a little recap. They got out the car. They were all hooping and hollering, arguing with one another. Cardell banished a gun, and Will Smith was unarmed. He had a gun in the vehicle that was stashed in between the seats, but he did not have it on his person. So Cardell literally shot Will 8 times in the back, and Will was unarmed. So Will Smith was in the front seat with a pistol tucked between the seat and the center console. Raquel, Will Smith's wife, was shot twice in one of her legs, and she was badly wounded. And an off-duty police officer who was on a date at the same bar as the other bystander later said that he went up to the scene after he heard the gunshots, and he was told by Cardell Hayes that he used his pistol he had on him to shoot Will Smith after hearing that Will Smith was threatening him with his gun. So, basically, Cardell confessed to shooting Will Smith, but only because Will Smith said that he had a gun. Didn't have it on him, but he had a gun, and he said, shoot first, ask questions later. That's his thought process, which I can understand in a way, but clearly, if he's not pointing a gun at you and he's just talking that he has a gun, I mean, why shoot him in the back? I guess she wanted to stop it before he was able to get to the gun. I just don't know. But needless to say, Hayes stated to the off-duty officer, and I quote, "What was I supposed to do?" Close quotations. There was also a recording of a 911 call that actually came in that night, which captured Cardell Hayes in the background saying he had shot a man who announced his intention of getting a gun from his car. Cardell Hayes was then arrested, and this happened immediately at the scene. A fully loaded 9mm handgun was found tucked in between the seat and the center console of Will Smith's car. Cardell Hayes and a passenger in his vehicle claimed self-defense, even though it was not known that Will Smith was actually brandishing a weapon. After an investigation, the New Orleans Police Department charged Cardell Hayes with second-degree murder. A post-mortem toxicology report was ran, and it showed that Will Smith's blood alcohol content was nearly 3 times the limit in Louisiana at 0.235. Now, the legal level of alcohol you could have is 0.08. So 0.235, yeah, it's a little out there, y'all. He was out there. I could see why he didn't want to stop at the scene of an accident. He didn't want to get a DWI, ruin his reputation, but at the same time, then we amount to this. Will Smith's funeral service was held days later, and it was held in a theater, and it was open to the public to view at the Saints practice facility in Metairie. Raquel Smith, Will Smith's wife, came to visit her husband at the funeral in a wheelchair. She was dressed in a black long-sleeve shirt and wearing sunglasses. Raquel brought the couple's 3 children. She stayed for several hours, always surrounded by Will Smith's former teammates from the Saints and the coaches. Will Smith's closed casket was on the 50-yard line, and on each side of the casket there was a monitor showing clips of his playing days. After the family and the friends paid their respects, the public was actually allowed in. The first man in line stopped in front of the casket, covered with yellow flowers, and with a trumpet played when the Saints go marching in. The coach for New Orleans Saints, Sean Payton, wanted to get Will Smith's children away from the ceremony to see the facilities, stating that there were way too many sad faces. He just wanted to make sure that the children, just try to get their mind off of everything that's going on, being surrounded by all these people mourning, including themselves mourning the death of their father. So, Sean Payton showed Will Smith's children the days on how their dad spent his time while playing for the New Orleans Saints, and what his life was like to be a Saints player. Will Smith's children lit up when he started escorting them towards the weight room. Sean Payton eventually showed them where Will Smith's locker was and took them to see the meeting rooms. The visitation was followed in true New Orleans fashion. It had a second-line parade that evening through the Lower Garden District, which was the same exact neighborhood where Will Smith was killed. The grieving continued Friday night, where, obviously in true New Orleans fashion, they had musicians and, people was just partying and just pretty much celebrating the life of Will Smith. Not his death, but his life. And a private family burial and funeral service was scheduled that following weekend. Meanwhile, Fuller wrote a letter to the New Orleans police demanding that they recuse themselves from investigating the shooting. In a letter delivered to Mayor Mitch Landrieu and the police superintendent Michael Harrison, Fuller charged that the investigation should be handed over to the state police or the FBI due to a grave lack of faith in the honesty and competency of the department's investigation. So, they're pretty much saying that because Will Smith was famous and all, that they were going to take the side of Will over Cardell. So, it was like a personal thing that it should be handled by another department. In a statement, police spokesman Tyler Gamble stated that the The killing was actually getting a fair and thorough, complete investigation, and they would follow the facts wherever the facts took them. So the trial began on December 5th, 2016 in Orleans Parish Criminal District Court. On December 11th, an Orleans Parish jury found Cardell Hayes guilty of manslaughter in the shooting of Will Smith and attempted manslaughter of his wife, Raquel. Raquel Smith testified on the stand, stating that she tried talking with her husband, Will Smith, to walk away from the incident due to it seemingly like Hayes was more physically imposing than her husband. Raquel also tried telling her husband to think about their 3 children that were at home with a babysitter. She stated that she recounted trying to reason with her husband and that the violence was just not worth it. Raquel then recalls that Cardell Hayes deliberately pumped 2 bullets into one of her legs and shot her husband dead in cold blood. And without provocation, he then told Raquel after shooting her in the 2 legs, "Look at you now." That was a direct quote from Cardell Hayes. "Look at you now." Raquel recalled the incident by stating, and I'm going to just quote everything that she says, "My worst nightmare happened for no reason." Her account was confirmed with the testimony from a former Saints teammate and fellow Super Bowl 44 champion Pierre Thomas, who had described riding in a separate car just right ahead of the second collision, seeing Will Smith be shot to death. And at one point, Cardell Hayes' legal team publicly suggested that a retired police captain who was friends with Will Smith stormed onto the scene and to burnish memories of the fallen ex-pro football player, Will Smith. Supposedly he whisked Will Smith's gun away from the scene before investigators could recover it. So Cardell's defense team and him are basically stating that a friend who was also a police officer and investigator went up to Will Smith's vehicle, retrieved the gun, and took it away from the scene before it could be discovered. Now, is that actual? This was just allegedly what happened, according to the defense of Cardell Hayes. So, in a coincidence, Cardell Hayes' father had tried to stab that same policeman before he was actually shot to death, dead by the other officers, in the months after Hurricane Katrina struck New Orleans, which was 11 years earlier than this incident. Police stated that Cardell Hayes' father had a mental health emergency on the day officers shot him dead. Cardell Hayes' legal team's corrupt cop angle relied on well-documented history of New Orleans Police Department that had violated the public civil rights so many times before, and it entered into an agreement with the federal government in 2012 to implement what was then an unprecedented number of agency-wide reforms. That theory suffered a blow after prosecutors established that the officer allegedly to have engaged in a cover-up for the sake of Will Smith's legacy was waiting for Smith miles away at the hotel bar where his group was headed before he was killed. So the accusation in which that Cardell Hayes and the defense team stated that former police captain, aka Williams' friend, whisked this gun away from the crime scene before investigators could get there, proven to be false because he was literally miles away at a bar waiting for Will Smith to arrive. So, in that instance, what neutral bystanders saw and heard conflicted with Raquel Smith's testimony that her husband was calmly walking away from the escalated violence with Cardell Hayes when he was callously murdered and she was shot in the leg. There were days when Raquel couldn't even get out of bed, and this is what she stated. I'm going to read exactly her words. There were days when I couldn't get out of bed, nor did I want to. I knew I had to be strong for my 3 beautiful kids, and that's when I felt Will the most. His strength, his determination, his commitment to being the best. Through my darkest days of life, Will gave me so much. And Raquel continued with stating, he instilled so much in me and showed me how to be strong. He always told me, Rocky, you can do this. Y'all. That just tears my little heartstrings. Like, oh my God. Oh my God. So, during this trial, jurors actually acquitted Cardell Hayes of intentionally ramming Smith's car in the moments before the shooting. And prosecutors wanted to prove that he'd done that to establish that he was the aggressor in the showdown that ensued. Jurors also rejected that Cardell Hayes had willfully murdered Will Smith or attempted to murder Raquel Smith, which that would have actually landed him in a mandatory life sentence. 10 out of the 12 jurors voted to convict Cardell Hayes of a lesser charge, finding him guilty of manslaughter and attempted manslaughter, finding that he unintentionally but still illicitly killed Will Smith and attempted to harm Raquel Smith. And it became one of the highest profile cases in New Orleans at this time at the criminal courthouse. And previously to this case, the last known court case that was like a high profile happened in 1969. And in 1969, this high-profile case was the acquittal of a local businessman charged with helping with the plot of the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. So, the Cardell Hayes and Will Smith case was right up there with John F. Kennedy's plot for assassination. What? Yeah, that out there. So, on April 20th, 2017, Cardell Hayes was sentenced to 25 years in prison for the charge of manslaughter. And he had an additional 15 years for the charge of attempted manslaughter on Raquel. And that was to be served concurrently. And on April 19th, the day before the sentencing, a judge denied Cardell Hayes' motion for a new trial. 3 years to the day after Cardell Hayes was sentenced, the United States Supreme Court handed down the Ramos versus Louisiana ruling. And that Ramos versus Louisiana ruling declared that a non-unanimous criminal conviction violated the 6th and 14th Amendments. And in Louisiana, a non-unanimous verdict is a verdict in which the jury does not have to be unanimous in order to convict a defendant. This means that a defendant can be convicted even if some jurors disagree with the verdict. So, you know how most trials and court cases that you see, all jurors must have a unanimous verdict or ruling? This wasn't the case, okay? So, Louisiana was actually one of only 2 states that allowed a non-unanimous verdict until the year of 2018. Cardell Hayes was released on bond in March of 2021 after serving over 4 years of a 25-year sentence. And this set the stage for Cardell Hayes to be retired on the reduced charges of the manslaughter and attempted manslaughter in which he once had been convicted. And because Cardell Hayes had not exhausted all of his appeals yet, he was directly impacted by the Ramos decision. And the decision in denying a new trial was actually reversed on November 19, 2020. So at first, they denied him to have a new trial, but now, November 19, 2020, they reversed that original denial for a new trial, granting him to have a new trial. And on January 11th, 2021, the Supreme Court vacated Cardell Hayes' conviction pending a new trial. And Cardell Hayes was initially convicted of manslaughter and attempted manslaughter, and he really cannot face charges anything greater than manslaughter in the retrial. He could have something lesser, but anything more than manslaughter, like second-degree murder, first-degree murder, capital murder, he couldn't have those. Manslaughter or less. So, on January 27th of this year, Cardell Hayes was found guilty of manslaughter at his retrial, and this is where he would actually face up to 40 years in prison. So, here's the update on the case. That was the case previously with some extra information, but the update on the case on the sentencing and all this good stuff for Cardell Hayes is this. He was sentenced on Thursday in a New Orleans courtroom. It was the second time Cardell Hayes, 36 years old at the time, had faced sentencing in Will Smith's case. He was convicted of manslaughter in December 2016 and later sentenced to 25 years in prison. But the jury voted the 10-2, and the conviction was actually later tossed out after the U.S. Supreme Court outlawed such non-unanimous verdicts. Cardell Hayes was released on bail after only serving the 4 years of the original 25-year sentence. He remained free during multiple retrial delays, some due to the COVID-19 pandemic. But Cardell Hayes was taken back into custody after the unanimous January 27th, 2024 verdict, and he had been awaiting his sentencing at the New Orleans jail. While waiting for the courtroom to open, about 24 of Cardell Hayes' family and friends formed a circle and they prayed in a wide courthouse hallway. Will Smith's daughter, Lisa, who is now a teenager, was amongst those who spoke in the courtroom before the sentencing took place. Lisa, Will Smith's daughter, stated that her mother had to relearn how to walk after she was shot in the leg twice by Cardell Hayes. And she also stated that not having her father around for major life events really affected her. And Lisa stated the following. I'm going to read a direct quote. "Mr. Hayes, you have ruined my life. You took my father away from me." And in testimony in support of Hayes, his mother, Dawn Mumphrey, expressed how she felt bad and was sad about the loss of Will Smith. And Cardell Hayes' mother, Dawn, stated this: "Our lives are forever changed as well as y'all's." And her voice shakily was being heard throughout the courtroom. And with tears in her eyes, she looked at the judge and stated, "I ask you for mercy." Will Smith again was shot 8 times, 7 in the back, during a confrontation with Cardell Hayes that happened after Cardell Hayes' SUV struck the rear of Smith's vehicle. Cardell Hayes has long said that he fired at Will Smith in self-defense. He said he fired only because he believed a drunken and belligerent Will Smith had retrieved a gun from his car. He then insisted on the stand that he heard a pop before he started shooting and that he did not shoot at Will Smith's wife, Raquel, who was hit in the legs. Evidence showed that Will Smith was intoxicated at the time of the confrontation, but there was no witnesses or any forensic evidence to back up Cardell Hayes' claim that Smith had wielded or fired a weapon. At the January retrial, defense attorney John Fuller did not call Hayes to testify, but insisted prosecutors had failed to prove Cardell Hayes didn't fire in self-defense. The overturned verdicts from the 2016 jury also included a attempted manslaughter conviction in the wounding of Raquel. Cardell Hayes was acquitted of that charge at the January 2nd trial, and Will Smith, who was a 34-year-old father of 3 and a defensive leader on the Saints team that lifted the spirits in New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina hit us in 2005, he helped carry a team to a winning season in 2006 and to a Super Bowl victory in 2010. Cardell Hayes owned a tow truck business who was actually once a semi-pro football player, and he was the father of a young son. And Will Smith played 9 years in the league, totaling 67.5 sacks, and helped the team win the Super Bowl. But in March, the Saints Hall of Fame unanimously elected Will Smith, but the team did not plan on announcing this election until May 17th. The team's website stated that the tragic development of Will's passing has resulted in multimedia outlets revealing the news of his impending induction. The team also added the following, and this is a direct quote. Will was a superb player for the Saints for 9 consecutive seasons. He was an integral part of the New Orleans Saints and played for the NFC Championship in 2006 and won the Super Bowl in 2009. The Saints Hall of Fame Museum expresses its deepest condolences and heartfelt prayers to Raquel, William Winter, and Lisa Smith for the loss of their husband and father, Will Smith. Will Smith was inducted into the team's Ring of Honor in 2019, and Raquel's speech was the following. I'm heartbroken that Will isn't here to accept this in person. In my heart, he is with us here today in spirit. He's proud as ever, and she stated that she could still hear his voice, and she also misses his voice. And shortly before Raquel was speaking, Raquel wiped away tears as she and the Hall of Fame crowd packed a country club ballroom and watched feature highlights of William Smith's playing career. And they also watched footage of the defensive end interacting with his children at charitable events and football camps. At one moment, the video showed Will Smith nearly flipping over Pittsburgh's Ben Roethlisberger's shoulder as the sturdy Steelers quarterback tried to duck under Smith's tackle, only to have Will Smith latch onto his arm and pull him to the turf for a sack. Then there were scenes of Will Smith wearing a red and white Santa Claus hat with his children on his lap. About a month before Will Smith's death, a panel of veteran reporters covering the Saints elected him into the Hall of Fame in his first year of eligibility. William Smith, a former Ohio standout whose Saints career spanned from 2004 to 2012, was informed of the honor before his death. William and Raquel Smith's 3 children, Winter, Williams, and Lisa, also attended this induction. They smiled as they posed with their mother and other family members in front of the Hall of Fame portrait of William Smith. And Will Smith, the picture of him, was him in a blazer smiling and holding the Vince Lombardi trophy that he helped the Saints win in the Super Bowl at the end of the 2009 season. And Raquel stated, Will, you will always be part of me. I love you, Will. Congratulations, baby. You did it again. Y'all, that is just heartstring moment right there. Like, you could feel the love and just those words that Raquel just spoke on how she felt about her husband, Will Smith. And just as important to the driving force and just the type of player that Will Smith was on the field, he also contributed to charitable causes that were just as big on his behalf of generosity as the Saints were on his game day efforts. Smith and his wife formed the Where There's a Will, There's a Way Foundation. And this particular foundation was a mentor. It assisted and provided educational support to those at-risk children throughout Louisiana and in his hometown in Utica, New York. And that's where, of course, he went to high school and was raised. Kingsley House and Bridge House Grace House were also two other charities that were a large part of Will and Raquel's focus. And in 2012, Will Smith and his wife hosted the Smith Family Christmas. Now, this was the event for families selected at the Kingsley House that provided national accredited and state certified programs to infants, youths, adults, parents, senior citizens, and those mentally challenged adults throughout southeastern Louisiana. The couple provided over 60 families annually with a holiday meal and some Christmas gifts from Santa Claus. In 2011, Will and Raquel and their foundation were a sponsor of the annual celebrity waiter event to binge Bridge House and Grace House. And that mission was to provide treatment to men and women who actually became dependent on drugs and alcohol. And it was to help lead them to a sober life and to be more productive in the world. And in addition to the foundation's financial support, Smith enlisted several of his teammates to serve as celebrity waiters for the event, even after his playing career had come to an end. And in his hometown of Utica, Will Smith sponsored an annual Evening with All-Stars dinner. And this honored the region's high school football stars for an event that he would also serve as a guest speaker for every year. And y'all, that is the case of Will Smith, former Saints player. And yes, y'all, that was a lot to take in. The fact that his children have to grow up without a father. Raquel was literally shot in the leg, and this all happened over road rage of Will hitting Cardell's car and then not stopping, and then Cardell getting pissed off, confronting Will Smith, ramming his car. Like, it did not have to go that way. Cardell could have just pulled over the side of the road. He could have made a police report, and then they could have dealt with it accordingly. They did not have to take the matter in his hands. And from what Raquel was stating, of course, we don't know because we weren't at the scene, but allegedly Raquel stated that she actually was able to convince Will to just walk away, telling him to think about the kids and his career, and that it's really not worth it. The fighting, the drama, all of that was not worth it. So he was actually walking away from the confrontation when he was shot the 8 times. And then to make a statement, Cardell had to go ahead and shoot Raquel and then said, "Look at you now." Like, if you were claiming self-defense, why was Will shot in the back? And if you're trying to blatantly say that you did not shoot Raquel, how the hell she ended up with 2 bullet wounds in her leg? Oh, Will did it? Did it ricochet off of a freaking car? Like, this is the questions that I have, honestly. And the fact that the second-degree murder was dropped to manslaughter, and then the whole case for attempted manslaughter on Raquel was just dropped. He was acquitted for it. Like, this woman had to relearn how to walk again. Days she had to figure out the strength to get out of her bed because she still had 3 children to take care of. And now she is doing that as a widow. But you're going to say, what? I am curious to know what y'all think. Y'all let me know. Do y'all believe that Cardell Hayes' case stating that he shot Will Smith in self-defense, that he allegedly did not shoot Raquel? Do y'all think that this was justified in the ruling of from second degree to manslaughter and just dropping Raquel's charge of the attempted manslaughter on her? I mean, the fact that these kids have to grow up without a father. These charities that he was helping, like he was helping his community. Now, again, I don't agree that Will Smith handled this like he should have either. And he should damn well not have been behind that will, knowing that he was 3 times the limit, 0.275. 0.275. Like, he should have not been behind that will. Obviously, the alcohol did the talking that night, and some people just can't handle their alcohol in intense situations, which intensifies the anger response. So, please do comment, write the show, go to our website. I mean, I will link everything in the show notes, our website, all that good stuff. But I am very curious to know what you think about this whole overall case. I know that I think I did a better detail in covering this case this go round with the updates and the more information, as I was just getting started when I first covered this case, which was episode number 2. Now this is episode 29 with this update. So if you enjoyed our show, please just write us. Our email is criminalbehaviorpodcast@gmail.com. Again, I'm going to link all our links in the show notes. You can also hit us on all the social media platforms. We're on Facebook, TikTok, Insta, Tumblr, whatever else that I cannot think of at this moment. But you can also comment on whatever podcast app that you're listening on, and I'll be able to get it as well. Also, there's a form at the bottom of our webpage, and it literally goes straight to us. If you actually have suggestions of other cases you would like me to cover, I'm open for it. I'm here for it. I'm just glad to just be able to cover these cases and get this information out to the public, make those aware. I'm a firm believer of just being aware of what's happening in the state of Louisiana, but in the world. You can't turn the news on without hearing about crime. Crime is out there, like very out there. And then according to what I was reading with Louisiana, the crime laws are really changing. I mean, this happens all the time. But according to what I'm hearing, according to the repeat offender law, how you get early release for good behavior, they're trying to do away with that. And if you're a repeat offender, then you're not going to get released on parole, is from my understanding. Of course, take it with a grain of salt. I didn't do as much research on it, but I mean, I do know that I've heard it and I read it. So yeah, I'm interested in that. Also, I am also going to recover the 6-year-old Bella's case. I do believe she was either case 3 or 4, but this was whenever she was literally stuffed into a bucket and placed on her mother's front lawn. There's an update in that case as well, so I will get that information out to you. That's probably going to happen either over the weekend or Monday or so. I do know that I did miss on Friday, and I've been working a hell of a lot of overtime. I also had a death in the family, which I'm still honestly dealing with, of course, but I started something. I want to see through it. This is my podcast. It's just a passion I have, and I just want to get this out there, keep y'all happy and informed. But again, if you enjoy the show, please rate and review us on any of your podcast apps: Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon, iHeart, Wondery, wherever you listen to your podcast. And be sure to come back in the next few days. I will be posting updates on our Facebook, Insta, TikTok, and all, and YouTube as well, letting you know when our next episode is going to come out. Generally, I try to have episodes out every Wednesday and Friday. So next week, I'm trying to get you more out there, because I missed this Friday and I feel really bad. I was doing so good, but yeah, we're going to get back. We got it. But thank y'all for supporting the show. Thank you for tuning in. I very, very much appreciate it. And until then, this is your host, Sarah Studier, and don't forget to like, share, follow the show. Tell your friends, tell your aunties, your uncles, your mom. Oh, let me not just let you go right quick. Don't forget to vote for the documentary show, because we're listed as a documentary at the Women's Podcasting Awards. Again, that link is also going to be posted in the show notes as well. And there's 3 others besides myself in this category, which are crime. They got it in the documentary series. And go ahead and vote. Please show us your love. I am very, very honored to just be nominated for this award. So, yeah. Until then, thank y'all, and y'all enjoy y'all night. Bye.